Yo, I just saw Stallone's director's cut of Rocky IV, also known as Rocky vs. Drago. I want to talk about it, but first, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Warby Parker. Warby Parker is committed to providing exceptional vision care online and in stores, offering eyeglasses, sunglasses, contact lenses, and eye exams. Try Warby Parker's free home try-on program. Order 5 pairs of glasses to try at home for free for 5 days, and there's no obligation to buy. Ships free and includes a prepaid return shipping label. Glasses start at $95, including prescription lenses. Sunglasses, progressives, and blue light lenses are also available. I took the quiz on their website previously to decide which style of glasses I wanted to try out, and went with some blue light lenses too, which cut down on eye strain during those late night editing sessions. I love the way they look, and they fit comfortably on my face. Try 5 pairs of glasses at home for free at warbyparker.com/cinemassacre. Basically, what happened here was at the start of the pandemic, in 2020, without having anything new to film, Stallone decided to use this as an opportunity and went back to his work from 35 years ago to improve on it, or at least in the way that he sees fit as the creator. This is the way he felt personally about it. There's a documentary about it on YouTube, which was really fascinating. It was more interesting than the re-edit itself, actually. It was edited by Derek Wayne Johnson, who I've interviewed on this channel before when his documentary, his John Avildsen documentary called King of the Underdogs came out. So before I watched the Rocky IV director's cut, I looked at the YouTube documentary, and then I also watched the original again. So I was all caught up, did my homework, so it was fresh in my mind. That way I could hopefully spot the differences a little more and also give my own opinion on how I felt, like which was better. So overall, just to cut to the chase, I really liked this new edit mostly. I feel like there wasn't much that was cut that I really missed, but there were some things I had a problem with, and we'll get into those soon. I heard that there was going to be 40 minutes of extra footage in this film, and that kind of put my expectations a little too high because it's actually about the same length as the original. So it was more like footage that had been swapped out. If I didn't read anything beforehand and just watched it, I would have never guessed that there was 40 minutes of new footage in there because it didn't seem like it. The original cut was very fast, very MTV-like because it was the 80s. And I thought this one would have a little bit more like breathing room. And it didn't really. It was still very, similar in length. But that's not a bad thing. I mean, it's not a bad thing to get everything, to have a fast pace. But I just expected it to be more like Rocky I, where it's a 2-hour movie and it's a little more of a drama. Now, those are my general thoughts, but now I want to go into all the things I liked about it and didn't like. So let's be positive. Let's go into the things I liked first. Near the beginning, there was a lot of footage that we had never seen before, where Rocky and Apollo are talking and Apollo wants to fight Drago. Now, in the original movie, they get to it very quickly, but in this one, we have a lot more reason for Apollo going into the fight. He explains himself a lot more. I thought it was interesting that the fight was offered to Rocky first, so they got a little more into that, and how Rocky wasn't really that interested in fighting him, so that's why Apollo was like, well, then I'll fight him first. So those additional scenes of Rocky and Apollo really helped. During the press conference and in the whole fight scene, Drago has more lines, and they make him a little more sympathetic this time. I mean, he's still the villain, and he still kills. Well, look, I mean, there's going to be spoilers here. I assume you've seen Rocky IV if we're talking about the director's cut here. So there's not really a way to spoil this, but I'm just saying we're going to talk details. So let that be the spoiler alert. Drago kills Apollo. Now, it's, he's the villain of the movie, but they make him a little more like, he's sort of a pawn. He's like the Frankenstein monster created in this lab. And there's a part I remember right before the fight when the audience are booing him and they're waving American flags and everything. You see this look on his face. And it's kind of like, he was hated so much in the beginning already. You kind of feel for him a little more. I mean, this is complicated. you don't want him to kill Apollo. It's not like Apollo did not deserve to die, but the cockiness and everything that was leading up to it, you kind of see a little more of where Drago's coming from. And then after the death, Rocky gives a speech at the funeral. And I don't remember this being in the original. Even having seen them both back to back, still sometimes it's a little hard to tell without going into like extensive comparisons. But Rocky is crying during the funeral and he's giving this speech. And that was really good that was in there. I feel like that was something where, cutting that was a mistake. And then here's another scene where I thought was really great that they added was, so in the original, I always felt it was weird that Rocky goes into the fight without any there's no hesitation or nobody's trying to stop him enough where it's like, hey, you might get killed yourself. I always kind of just, noticed that it was awkward, but I dismissed it on the grounds that it's just a movie. But here you go. They have a whole scene where the boxing commission is trying to tell Rocky not to go into the fight. They say, Drago has had one professional fight and one man is dead. So let's take some time. Let's look into this guy. And they don't get into how it's resolved, but at least it's in there and it's acknowledged. There's also the scene where Rocky's talking to his son, and there's a little bit more dialogue in here, I think. I don't remember hearing the lines before where Rocky said, you got to live for yourself because you got to live with yourself. And that was a really great line. I was like, wow, I don't remember that being in there. That was good. After the finale, after the final fight, there was this really interesting bit where they actually show Rocky leaving the ring just to see that exit happen. And he exits through what looks like Drago's corner. So they kind of cross paths there. And it's shot from a very candid angle, but you do see Rocky kind of give Drago like a final boxing, one of those handshakes where he hit the glove. That was interesting just to see them look at each other one last time after the fight was done. It looked so candid where it might have even been just a shot of Stallone and Dolph Lundgren, like of them just kind of having just filmed the fight and he was getting out of the ring. I don't know, but that was cool. And it was also cool that they played Eye the Tiger during that scene. That was actually a better exit song, I think, than Hearts on Fire. But now let's talk about what I didn't like. And this might have been a problem with my sound system. I'm not entirely sure. That's why I wanted to, put this in an ambiguous category. But did anybody else notice that the music was mixed lower? Or that's what it seemed like. And I compared both movies side by side. Like I even went back and like looked at some of the montage scenes again, and it's night and day. The original, the music is loud. You can hear it all. Here, it was just so low. It wasn't kicking ass the way it should. I'm glad all the songs were in there and that they didn't have to have any licensing issues to renew any of those songs. So that was great that nothing got lost. But it just, those montages weren't kicking ass. Like, for example, at the end of Hearts on Fire, when it's going into the Up the Mountain section, the instrumental, while he's running in the snow and those guys are following him in the car, and then they like kind of skid out. When that car skids out, you don't even hear the music anymore. All you hear is just the sound effects. And like there's parts where Drago's running on the treadmill and all you hear is him grunting, and the grunts are so much louder than the music. I was like, oh man, this really kills it. Like, unfortunately, it was a really huge drawback. And like I said, I don't know if it's because maybe this movie is in like a different type of surround mix and maybe my player wasn't, interpreting it right, or that, maybe in the movie theaters, maybe during the Fandango, the one night only, maybe in the theater it sounded fine. So I don't know, but that's just more of a question for, has anybody else noticed that? The beginning was 7 minutes of Rocky 3 recap. I found that really strange. I mean, I have no problems with seeing more Rocky 3, but that's 7 minutes of extra runtime I was hoping for that instead was actually subtracted for all this Rocky 3 stuff we've already seen. I don't know why, he did that, but it was, it's not a huge complaint. It's just something that was a little, awkward. Some of the pacing actually was a little too fast. Like I thought this movie would slow it down a bit, but it was actually a little too fast. For example, And these are all little things, but that's what this is about. It's just about little things when you're going into an extensive, uh, re-edit of something. So let's say when Drago is first introduced, when it's in that like scene when the his trainer or his manager is talking about how like he says like what he punches, everything he punches, he destroys. And then Drago takes that punch and it just freeze frames and you feel that hit. And in the original, it just, fades into the next scene and you just have that sound effect and it like just, it lets that sink in with you. But here, it still freeze frames and it still fades, but then the dialogue of the next scene is already going. And it's like, wait a minute, you just lost that, all that impact. You just lost that. There's another moment like that where there's a cardboard cutout of Apollo and Drago comes over and pushes it down. And I feel like that lingered a little more in the original. But this one, it felt like a lot faster. So I could be wrong, double check, the timing, look at the cuts, but I just felt like it was losing some of that impact. The James Brown segment with Living in America, there was a lot of alternate angles that were shown, and I don't really know why the alternate angles were necessary because a lot of them weren't better. And one of them I remember seeing the lip sync was really bad. So like, that you were hearing the voice, but James Brown, his mouth wasn't moving. So there were like parts in there where I was like, why did you, use a worse shot? And once again, the mix in that scene, like, like I remember when Apollo is standing in front of that like bull when he's coming down and there's like this steam coming out of its nostrils. And in the original, you hear all those sounds, like the steam is going on, you hear the audience. It just seemed like the mix here was a little more dead and more sterile. Like you just heard the song, but it was kind of like it was in like an isolated chamber. Like it just didn't feel that big environment. Once again, it's worth compare it to the original, listen to them side by side and just see, like, I don't know, maybe it was my setup. I'm not sure. I always remember the part when he's talking to Adrian on the steps and she's saying, you can't win. And that's right before he goes into the car. And then you hear no easy way out. Something was different. There were some added parts in the dialogue. And then there was some of it which he took out and then put it in later as like a voiceover. So that was an interesting choice. I'm not quite sure how I feel, but it wasn't bad. The tunnel scene, it changed the flashbacks to black and white. That was a good choice, I think. And it wasn't entirely black and white. It kind of had like a bluish tint to it. But the tunnel scene, I think, was an opportunity. They could have actually moved that a little later because I feel like the original always struck me as strange when that tunnel scene feels like you're moving into the next part of the film. Like that's a transition. But then after he drives to wherever he's going, I forget if they even explain it. The next scene, he's talking to his kid and then he talks to Adrian one more time, which I'm not sure if that was in the original or not, but I felt like they could have moved that around, had the tunnel be the last thing you see of him before he's in Russia. That would have been better, I thought. I would think. Yeah, because about that tunnel, like he's not going to the airport yet or anything. I don't remember if they explain where he's supposed to be going, but it seems like this big, like monumental trip, but then he's back in his house again. So, there was a line from Paulie that got cut, which I was really upset about, actually. It's one of the funniest Paulie lines ever, I think, was, and this man has many funny lines, but the one that has always stuck out to me in Rocky IV was when they first arrive in Russia and they're going into the cabin, and when Paulie sees it for the first time, he's like, "There's no TV out here. We'll crack out here. We'll crack out here." It's like, what do they say? Self-fulfilled prophecy. Like he's saying that they're going to crack out here, because so Paulie, what I get out of him, what I think his character is he loves his brother-in-law. He'll do anything to support him. He'll come all the way out there, but at the same time, he's going to be a pain in the ass. He's going to make it as difficult as it needs to be. That's Paulie. So cutting that line, I thought was a real shame. there was a voiceover that got added during the fight, where Rocky says to himself, like, "Get up, you can do it." It sounded like something Stallone might have recorded recent, like he might have done this like as audio just for the director's cut. I don't know why that was in there. I didn't find it necessary at all. And also, having watched the documentary and seen how he wanted to make the fight a little more realistic, I didn't notice a whole lot. There was a few added punches here and there, or like things that were a little different, but there was nothing major. Um, in the documentary, he was talking about how he didn't want to see the same punch land over and over. He said in boxing, he was saying like three, that you can get away with a 3-punch combination to one part before, one part of the body before they block it. Like there's parts where Drago has his arms up, and he says like by instinct after a punch to the body, like the first thing he would do would be to like go down to block the next one. But I still noticed a lot of parts where Drago would just have his arms up like he's just letting Rocky take punches to his body. So I don't know. I don't think there was a whole lot of difference. And actually, Rocky hits him a lot more in the last round. Like I think he wanted to be more of a beating. So I'm not quite sure how I feel about a lot of it. There was also a problem I had with the subtitles, and I think this might have been something with my player or my streaming service or whatever. It was really weird how whenever anyone would speak in Russian, there would be 2 subtitles. And usually that kind of thing doesn't happen unless you have your subtitles turned on. Mine were turned off. So I didn't see subtitles anywhere else during the English parts, but you would see a burned in subtitle and then like an automatic one underneath. And I was like, wow, that's weird. I've never seen anything like that. It's really strange. So that's what I liked and that's what I didn't like. Now just some mixed thoughts. So the robot, obviously they cut the robot. Now I feel like the robot, we all know it was really out of place to begin with. So it makes perfect sense that he cut that out. I kind of missed seeing Paulie though early on, because then you kind of don't really have an introduction for Paulie, because then the first time you see him, I think, is in the press conference, and he sort of just starts speaking eventually, but like he's there. But I guess if they didn't have any footage of Paulie early on, like anything of him without the robot, then they couldn't do anything about it. So that's why it's a mixed sort of opinion. There's a lot of interesting things I learned from watching that documentary. There's a part where Stallone noticed a part where when Apollo, right before he fights Drago, and he's pointing at him saying, "I want you," his gloves are missing. Like he had no gloves on, and then it cuts back and then he has gloves again. So he fixed that with the re-edit. But it's funny because, I've seen this movie for 35 years and I never noticed that once. Also in that documentary, he said that he thought that Apollo's killing was too much of a beating, and he wanted it to seem more like Apollo fights back a little more. And aside from like a few punches here and there, it wasn't much different. He also said that he wished that he let Apollo live, which would have been interesting. Obviously, there's nothing he can do about it, like they can't go back and reshoot it. But he says, like, imagine what that would be like, because that would change the trajectory of the entire series if Apollo lived. But he said it would have been interesting maybe to have him just like in a wheelchair or something else, but to have him be there as like a mentor, So that's it. I generally liked the cut. I think if I were to change anything, I would just be like, maybe have a proper credit opening, like maybe bring back the 2 gloves. I mean, because I kind of missed that. Like the 7 minutes of Rocky 3 was too much. We needed to get into Rocky 4 quicker. The music mix was a problem for me, but I generally liked all the new stuff that they put in. The only thing that I would have definitely done, though, more montage. It needs more montage. The only other thought, the last thought I want to say, is that if he did this to Rocky 4, I would love to see him do this with Rocky 5, because there is a work print that's out there of Rocky 5. not official at all. And it's better. It's better than the theatrical version that we've seen. There's a lot of really good stuff in Rocky 5 that got cut. So I would love to see him do that next. Maybe it's a personal decision. I mean, maybe because, he lost his son, Sage. Maybe it's a little bit too emotional for him to go back to it. I'm not sure. That's just a hunch of mine. But yeah, I would love to see a Rocky 5 director's cut. And, John Avildsen was the director, so scratch that. It would be a Stallone cut. Yeah, so anyway, I could talk Rocky all day. So, yeah, it's a really interesting re-edit. I say, watch the original, watch the new edit, and then see what you think.